Hello, my friend. Welcome to another book review. Today's book is Jade City by Fonda Lee. Jade City by Fonda Lee. This was an excellent book. I wasn't sure about it when I started, but once I got into it, it turned out to be a fantastic read. Jade City, strictly speaking, in my estimation, is going to fall into the urban fantasy category because it is urban and there is magic. Ergo, it is fantasy. So, strictly speaking, urban fantasy. However, the novel also sort of defies and perhaps even redefines that genre and several others. So, for today's purposes, we're going to go ahead and say it's urban fantasy and leave it like that. Jade City is set in a fictional island nation where certain parts of the populace can wear jade. Just, the stone jade, like you and I are familiar with. And when they do, it endows them or heightens certain potential physical powers. If you've ever seen a movie like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it's that kind of thing. It's stuff that really cannot be done, but it's not like Superman level. So I personally like that level of magic, that level of superpower. One of the things about this story is it's sort of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets The Godfather, which is a pretty cool combination. There is a lot of family and sort of inside political intrigue, along with some really fantastic action scenes. So if you're into martial arts movies, if you've ever enjoyed those, this is definitely a book you want to check out. If you're a fan of crime family drama, such as The Godfather, Donnie Brasco, Goodfellas, movies like that, then you might want to take a look at this. The setting is sort of what is called, I just learned this myself, the setting is called Second World, which is basically Earth, but not really. So they have things like pistols and trees and cars, and they all eat regular food, and jade is a real stone that we have on Earth, but it's not Earth. So it's Earth, but over here. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great setting. There are multiple books that use this same idea of second world. That's how it was defined to me. So you'll recognize everything that's in the book. You don't have to learn a whole new language. You don't have to, understand Elvish or something in order to get into the book. It's very much like Earth. It just isn't quite Earth. For example, one of the cars that one of the guys drives, it's that it's a very fancy car, but it's not a car that you will ever find driven around on Earth because that car doesn't exist, and I don't remember exactly what it's called now, but it's a car like you would find on Earth, and you can tell just based on the description that it is a very fancy car, and that's all you need to know. So, on to the review for those of you who are writers. First of all, let me say that the first chapter or so, I kind of had my doubts about the story, and here's why. I wasn't super fond of the editing. It wasn't the writing, it seemed like editing choices that I would have made differently, whether as an author or that I would have expected an editor to catch. And primarily, those editing choices have to do with tightening the story, tightening the sentences, keeping things a little bit more together than they otherwise were in the final version. Word choice, things like, well, you said this sentence and it took, 25 words. You could have said it in 19, but you didn't. And that was sort of frustrating for me at the beginning. The thing about that, though, is that sort of argument, that sort of complaint kind of goes out the window once you start investigating voice and tone and things like that. When you are choosing to use a deliberate voice, which is what you should be doing as a writer, then things like grammar and punctuation and word choice, all this kinds of thing, the correct way to do things goes out the window completely. And you should be obeying your own set of rules for your writing, if that makes sense. So, the thing that bothered me, I suppose, about and again, we're talking about the very first chapter, is it seemed to me that there were choices that could have been made post revision in the editing stage, where it's switching words around, it's moving sentences around a little bit, that kind of thing. However, that wasn't an issue for the rest of the book. It really seemed concentrated in just like the first chapter or so, which was kind of perplexing. But other than that, I really don't have any complaints about it. And that's a very small thing. It's nothing that's going to interrupt your reading. This is something that as a writer I picked up on, and most readers who are not crafting fiction probably wouldn't even notice. So I'm being very, very nitpicky here. The other thing I wanted to talk about with this book is the world building. Now, world building is something that I myself am still working on. It's still a challenge for me. I'm very used to setting things in the real world, even if something supernatural is happening. Now, there's still world building that happens when you do that. When you set something on a contemporary Earth but change one thing, which a lot of novels do, you're still world building. You're still, I don't want people to think that a book like Party, for example, which is set in contemporary Santa Barbara, California, is somehow not world building. Well, these characters inhabit a world, a fictional world that I've put them in. Okay, so you're still doing world building even if you're using a contemporary setting. So what Fonda Lee has done here, again, with this second world or second Earth type of idea, is mostly everything's the same except for these few minor changes. And she does an exquisite job of it. One of the traps I think that comes with world building, particularly in any kind of fantasy genre or subgenre, is overbuilding the world, or this, and this happens a lot to us, it may have happened to you also, is you do a lot of research on your setting and then you shove it in there, like it or not. It's like, yeah, but I learned this, and so by God, you're going to learn it too, reader. Don't necessarily want to do that. Now, there are some genres like epic fantasy, which are, these giant, 3-inch size paperback novels where readers clearly want that. That's exactly what they want. They want to spend page after page reading description, reading about the great feast, or combat that goes on for just paragraph after paragraph. That's fine. That's a genre convention. Perfectly acceptable. I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't do it. Just know your genre before you do. What Fonda Lee has done here is set us in a very similar Earth, so it's easy to jump right in and keep moving with her. We don't really get stuck, hiccup on anything like, wait, is that a tree? Or wait, was that an orc? I don't understand. Like, none of that happens. You're just along for the ride from page one, which is fantastic. However, she endows her setting and her characters and her language with just enough difference and just enough sort of fantasy and foreign elements that make you go, oh, this is clearly not an Earth that I'm familiar with. So it's a great weaving together of both contemporary and fantasy elements. So if you're looking to do that in your writing, I would recommend taking a look at Jade City. This is the first in a series. I have not completed the series yet. I've only finished the first book, but again, well worth your time, well worth the read if you're into martial arts, if you're into East Asian culture, and if you're into urban fantasy of kind of any kind. One of the interesting things about the world building that my friends and I discussed at our science fiction Friday, Sci Friday book group was, where was this based on? What was the analogous Earth setting? And I was like, oh, it's Japan. And then there were guys like, no, it's clearly Hong Kong. And then somebody else was like, well, it was China, but it wasn't Hong Kong. And so we had this great debate about what parts, where did Lee take from real Earth to endow into her story, and we couldn't agree on anything, so we might have to ask the author, I suppose. Functionally, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because why? Because it's fantasy. It doesn't have to be Hong Kong or China or Japan. It can be wherever, because it's a completely made-up world. It's just familiar to us. And to do that successfully, I think really speaks well of the author. So, if you're looking to study world building, looking to study fight choreography in your fiction, this would also be a great book for that. Lee does a fantastic job of keeping the action going, but it's not confusing, particularly when we're talking about what is basically superpowers, because some of these characters have these heightened abilities, can deflect bullets and push people from far away and things like that. They use guns, they use knives, they use swords. It's this sort of amalgamation of weaponry, which is really cool. So to be able to put all of that together into a fight scene and not lose the audience is a real skill. And if that's something that you feel like studying or that you need to work on, Jade City does a fantastic job of combining all of those elements into something fast-paced but understandable. So, all in all, this was a great book for writers to study who are into any of these genres: action, adventure, magic, any of these things. Great book to study for that. If you're just a reader of this type of fiction, then I think you're really going to enjoy it, and certainly reading the first book in the series is worth your time to take a look at. So that's our book review for this episode. I hope that was helpful. Make sure to leave comments and like and share, and if this is on YouTube, make sure you please subscribe. We'll be doing some more book reviews as time goes on that will split up between what's in it for readers and what's in it for writers. So I hope you will stick around for all of that. Please leave a comment and any questions you have, and I'll be happy to answer those. All right? Thank you very much, and remember, keep writing.